14th, 2024 at 6:30 p.m. in the boardroom of the Administration Building at 70 Conover Road in Colts Neck, New Jersey. Vincent, may I please have a roll call?
Yes. Mrs. Denoya.
Here.
Mrs. Dillon
Here.
has acknowledged remote participation. Mrs. Dimes.
Here.
She is also participating remotely. Mr. Orico.
Here.
Mrs. Ramirez.
Here.
Mr. Rignetta.
Here.
Mrs. Volpe.
Here.
Mr. Walsh.
Here.
Okay, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, this meeting has been duly advertised in the Asbury Park Press in a schedule of meetings dated January 11, 2024, notice of which has been filed with the Deputy Clerk for the Colts Neck Township, and the requirements of posting of notices have been met. Can I please ask you all to stand for the flag salute? The flag is located in the back of the room. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Yes. Committee Rignetta, will you please read the mission statement?
The mission of Colts Neck Township Schools is to empower and inspire students to be confident, creative, self-sufficient learners who maximize their strengths and talents and contribute as responsible participants in their ever-expanding world.
Thank you. All right, so before we get into the communications tonight and president's report and so on and so forth, we do have an appointment of a board member. So I'm looking for a motion for an appointment of Richard J. Wickberg to fill the board vacancy that we currently have through January 2025.
Motion.
Can I please have a second? Thank you.
Allison?
Vince, may I please have a roll call?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. Any questions or comments? No? All right. May I please have a roll call?
Yes, you may. On the appointment of Richard Wickberg to the board vacancy, Mrs. Denoya.
Yes.
Mrs. Dillon.
Yes.
Mrs. Dimes.
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Ramirez, excuse me.
Yes.
Mr. Rignetta.
Yes.
Mrs. Volpe.
Yes.
Mr. Walsh.
Yes.
Mr. Orico.
Recuse.
Thank you. The motion carried.
Thank you.
So,
At this time, we will administer the oath. Vince, will you please administer the oath?
yes,
Sorry.
indeed. So,
I never had to read that part of the agenda before.
I'll allow Mr. Wickberg to come forward, and that's all good. If you want to stand there, I'm going to ask you to place one hand on the Bible if you choose, and repeat after me for the required oaths for school board members pursuant to NJSA 18A and Statute 41-1-1, excuse me. So, I, Richard J. Wickberg,
I, Richard J. Wickberg,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and that I will bear true faith and allegiance
and that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the same and to governments established in the United States and this state
to the same and the governments established in the United States and this state
under the authority of the people,
under the authority of the people,
so help me God.
so help me God.
I, Richard J. Wickberg,
I, Richard J. Wickberg,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I possess the qualifications prescribed by law
that I possess the qualifications prescribed by law
for the office of member of a Board of Education,
for the office of member of the Board of Education,
and that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform all the duties of that office
and that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform all the duties of that office
according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
Furthermore, I affirm and declare that I am not disqualified as a voter, nor disqualified due to a conviction of a crime or offense listed in NJSA 18A:12-1.
Furthermore, I affirm and declare that I am not disqualified as a voter nor disqualified due to a conviction of a crime or offense listed in NJSA 18A:12-1.
And that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office, so
And
help me God.
And that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office, so help me God.
Congratulations. By the power authorizing me, and now pronounce you board member, school board official, and board member to the Colts Neck Township Board of Education. Congratulations. And then, as I guess a matter of business, Mr. Whitford can
Sign that.
acknowledge the photograph.
Yes. All right. So moving along on our agenda this evening, there are no communications, no presentations, sorry, no communications, and that brings me to the report of the president. Good evening, everyone. As we gather here tonight, I am pleased to begin by congratulating Richard Wickberg on his successful appointment to our Board of Education. Richard, we are eager and excited for your experience and skills that you bring to this table. I also want to extend my heartfelt thanks to Mark Tersavani and Phyllis Camera for their participation in the interview process. Your willingness to step up and offer your time, insights, and commitment to this board are greatly appreciated. It's through the dedication of individuals like yourselves that our community continues to thrive and grow stronger. As we approach the beginning of a new school year and our families are preparing with supply lists and back-to-school shopping, I would like to take this opportunity to remind everyone of the importance of following the proper chain of command when addressing school-related concerns. This chain begins with your child's teacher, followed by the school principal, and then ultimately, if you are not satisfied, with administration or superintendent, or of course, in situations that warrant addressing it with them immediately. The purpose of this structure is to ensure that concerns are addressed at the most appropriate level and so they can effectively be resolved, allowing issues to be done so quickly and efficiently. However, we as a board understand that there may be times when a parent or a community member feels that they are unable to effectively communicate within this structure. So long as I sit on this board, and especially while I'm sitting in this seat as board president, I can assure this community that this board will always hear any and all concerns and work to address them and find solutions for all. Please know that we have an email address where you can reach out to our board directly, which can be found on our website under our Board of Education. As a board, we are committed to being accessible, responsive, and transparent in our community and our service to that community. Thank you, and that concludes my president's report. Brings us to our committee reports. Mr. Walsh.
Had a great tour. Thank you, Vince. And thank you for Nick Moretta, who's not here tonight, our facilities manager, who's doing a great job overseeing our ESEP project, our energy saving infrastructure project. I had the opportunity to tour the schools with the DCO project manager, John Doe? Robert. Vinny was in attendance too. So I went to see the progress firsthand and went into all the classrooms, went into the hallways, the bathrooms, the gyms. It's moving along incredibly well. All the classrooms will have air conditioning and all new temperature control BMS, building management system upgrades, so our facility manager and building staff can monitor any changes that need to be adjusted. So the rooftops are all new rooftops. They addressed all the situation with leaks. And the solar panels were delivered last week and a half ago, with installation that should be going ongoing, I think next week start. So the solar panels are gonna go up on top of their roofs, and more than likely it's gonna be installed with the kids in the classroom. They're gonna monitor and make sure there's no encumbrance or noise disturbing the kids in the classroom. It should be a quiet project, but the project's going well, and it's on schedule, and the money's being spent. Review all the project notes, and it's not being mismanaged for the public that's watching, the audience tonight. Everything's being done the way it should be. So I'm very proud of the project and work that's being done to our schools to build them up the way they should be for the kids and the teachers in the classroom. Vinny, do you have any?
Yeah, I want to commend Nick Retta because he does a lot of maintenance fixes in-house, and saves the district a lot of money, so he takes that initiative to heart, and I really appreciate that, especially like in the girls' locker room, the stain that was on the floor. He's been there for a while, and he's getting it up off that floor, doing a really good job with his team doing that, so. And among many other things that he does throughout all 3 schools, so I want to commend him on that.
We also cleaned up the courtyards. I don't know if you've been to the schools, I'm sure you have, the parents. They cleaned a lot of the trees out, and they're gonna get together with our landscape company and beautify that area. The kids use it. They go out, teachers bring them out. You have a Peace Garden, Cedar Drive. So it's gonna be, the project itself is enhancing the inner part of the school and the outer part of the school. So it's just a winning thing all the way around.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Kevin or Vinny? All right. Vinny, moving to Communications Committee.
One thing that I will, the minutes of our meeting that we had last week,
Yeah.
that's going to be approved, and one thing that is going to be added to the opt-out for the health curriculum is a link to the letter from 2022 and the changes were made to the law. You can access that as well as the updated changes to the healthcare curriculum before you decide to opt out.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Vinny? Curriculum Committee, that's me. Curriculum Committee should have received an email from me this week. Our Director of Curriculum, Erica Reynolds, did get back to us the curriculum that the teachers and her were working on over the summer has been completed. So I did reach out to the Curriculum Committee to gauge the need for a meeting. I have not heard back from anyone yet, so here's my follow-up. Please reach back out to me so we can get together. Before the 28th would be ideal, since that's when we're looking to approve that curriculum, if there's a need for it. So there's that going on. Other than that, there is nothing else currently right now in the books for curriculum. Finance and, questions or comments for me? Finance and Negotiations Committee, Mr. Rico.
Really nothing going on in your report.
Do you have a meeting scheduled at all, or?
No.
Any questions for Jason? All right. Policy, that's back to me. So we did meet on Monday the 12th. Thank you, Dr. Gregory, for printing out these minutes. The full board should have received these minutes this afternoon. We just met on Monday. It was a very lengthy meeting. We went through a lot of policies that were sent to us from our policyholder to adopt, changes to adopt, and no new policies. These were all changes. We have had legal look at them. We met. We also had legal present during this meeting to address any questions and concerns that we had. So you will see on the agenda tonight, there are several policies that we are putting up for first read tonight. There was one policy that regulation that we are not adopting. It's a honor roll student achievement regulation, and we don't have a policy to go with it, so therefore it was not needed or required and really didn't apply to our district. Otherwise, all of the policies that we have that came through, we have up for our first read right now. So we're up to date with everything. Let's see, what else did we do? We do have, the full board should have also received, we have some new proposals for a couple policies that we're looking into. One being a social emotional learning policy and or regulation, as well as potentially a Board of Ed future agendas, not for this evening. So those will be part of a future discussion. Otherwise, that was pretty much it for the policy meeting. Any questions or comments for me?
Yeah, I have a question
Yes.
on the policy. Unfortunately, I was
Yes.
away and I was unable to attend that meeting. On the honor roll thing, we don't have a policy for it, but what exactly was that?
So the policy had in there basically what the structure would be, and Mary Jane, correct me if I'm wrong, basically what the structure would be for when we have our honor roll students, how the honor roll is distributed, when we're honoring them during different ceremonies, thank you, ceremonies, so there was like at the high school graduation ceremony, they would be honored, which we obviously don't have a high school graduation ceremony.
Do we do any type of acknowledgement for the honor roll other than, I mean, I know some kids come home with like a paper, but do they get?
They're listed in the diplomas.
Yeah.
In terms of where their achievement has fallen.
I mean, like on a, like quarterly or, yearly thing, do they, do any type of, auditorium?
Like a celebration of
Like
that
a
type of thing.
celebration or just?
Not that I'm aware of, no, they don't. But it's something we can look into. I'm sorry. I just wanted to make sure.
That are on the honor roll, I think maybe if we can, make some type of policy to, or some type of structure to honor them. I know a lot of kids that do make the honor roll and they work tirelessly and it's a big deal for them to make that, especially the high honor roll. So, I'd like to see, them be acknowledged maybe at a Board of Ed meeting. Hopefully there's 50 kids. I'd like to see 100. I don't know how many kids we have here that make that, but I certainly would like to see if we can put in place a policy where we definitely acknowledge their hard work and their achievement.
Do we need a policy to do that, or is that something that we could just take?
We don't have to. The regulation that was updated was part of the comprehensive equity plan.
Right.
That basically just reiterated
Updated, like,
non-discrimination, that type of thing. But we don't need a policy for it. We can do it.
Oh, great.
Yeah, if we want to, if that was
I wasn't
something.
sure, 'cause I heard it and I saw it, but I wasn't sure what it was about, but it came to mind that.
There's usually structures and like, at the high school level where there's weighted and different things that happen, there's a little bit more criteria that goes into it, but if we can do it without,
Yeah,
it's
it would
something
be
we
great
want to
to
do.
elevate, even though they're only in, elementary and, Cedar Drive or whatever, I think it would be a nice thing to do.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right. Advocacy, Angelique?
It's been pretty quiet in Trenton. We're still waiting to hear, the Freedom to Read Act. It did leave the committee. I'm sure it will be passed. Like I said, in past meetings, I don't agree with, that legislature, but, I'll keep you posted. And other than that, I'm just waiting for September when everybody gets off of, vacation.
Always when things pick up there. Any questions or comments for Angelique? Okay. Vinnie, back to you for ad hoc committee.
Nothing to report this time.
All right, any questions for Vinnie? No? All right, and then we'll get into the liaison. So Brenna, anything for Parent Advisory Committee?
No, nothing to report. Hopefully, we'll be picking it back up in the fall, but giving the parents the summer off.
Okay. And there will be a communication to the parents for, if and when we're going to be having meetings?
Yeah, we haven't discussed yet, but
Okay.
I'm assuming that we'll probably, send out an invitation for parents who would like to get involved again. I don't anticipate it just rolling over, but
Right.
I'll be talking to Dr. Yarabay about it.
Okay, wonderful, thank you. Any other questions for Brenna? All right. Amy, Colts Neck PTO?
Nothing for me to report.
Thank you. Any questions for Amy? No? All right. Township Committee, I will report out on that. So I know there still are the summer concert series taking place on our Thursday evenings. And then let me go to my note here. I apologize. I'm sorry?
Tomorrow night.
Yes, tomorrow night there's a concert. Yes, thank you, Allison. Also, tonight there's actually a township meeting. Obviously, I am unable to be there. 1 hour of our sergeants is being promoted to lieutenant since there was the promotion of the new police chief. So that is going to be, his new title will be Lieutenant Morgan Savage. So that's happening. Otherwise, I know they're currently working on affordable housing plans, and there's going to be a public planning board meeting held for that, and there's no date as of right now, but the public will be notified about that. So if that's something that interests you, as it should for most of us being taxpayers in this town, you might want to stay tuned for that. Otherwise, I have nothing else. Any questions for me about Township Committee? No? And then Kevin, full circle here, back to you. Anything for the seniors?
If you're 55 and over, you can join the Senior Citizens. It's a great organization, they're great people. They've lived in town for 40, 50, 60 years. They've sent their kids through the district, and they still live here because they love Cold Snack. It's only $10 to join. They have their meetings the first Wednesday of each month at the Cold Snack Inn. It's free buffet. Put a good food spread out. And they have meetings, kind of reached out to their administrative staff, president, vice president. They have a couple of trips coming up, and they do a lot of travel to Senior Citizens for really cheap prices, and really nice places they visit. September, they're going to Newport, Rhode Island. They're going to go to the Vietnam Memorial Museum on September 19th. They're taking a Hudson River foliage tour, leaf tour, October 14th. Fiddler on the Roof is November 7th. And November 19th and 20th, they're going up to Lancaster, staying overnight. It's a theater trip. And then December 16th, their holiday parties at Molly Pitcher. So I encourage everybody that's out there listening to join, if you're watching, and that's it.
If you're older.
If you're older.
Well, I must say, I'm privileged since I'm married to a senior that so I could take advantage. I'm
Strike
sorry.
that from the report.
I'm sorry. But it was nice and kind of them to say that since I was married to you, so if you are married, don't feel that you cannot participate when you can. They're very welcoming, so.
They keep lowering the age, 55, well, we're gonna be there sooner than we think.
Yeah.
Don't worry, Vinny, you have a lot of years to catch up.
Any questions for Kevin? No, all right. Angelique, State and County School Boards Association.
Not much to report, just to remind everybody that September 16th, 7 to 9, if you want to register for the virtual governance. I know a few of us have to do the second governance, and November 13th, 7 to 9, same time, both virtual meetings, and we got to register through Vint, so it is a requirement, so don't forget. And that's it.
Thank you. Any questions for Angelique? All right. That brings us to our superintendent's report. Mary Jane?
Okay. So last week was the end of our 6-week extended school year program. I want to thank all the teachers, the students, and parents for another great extended school year program for our students with IEPs. A tremendous amount of planning and preparation goes into our summer programs like ESY, and I just want to thank all the teachers, our therapists, instructional assistants, bus drivers, transportation aides, everyone. It takes a village to implement these programs outside of the regular school operating session, and I want to give a lot of thanks and praise, especially to Dr. Richard Back, our Director of Special Services, and his administrative assistant, Ruth Lawton, who do a tremendous amount of work behind the scenes to coordinate and implement the program. So much thanks and appreciation to everyone involved in that. There's lots of activities at our school, as Mr. Walsh said, from regular summer deep cleanings that are going on and maintenance, preventative maintenance in accordance with our long-range facilities plan, as being done, and as well as our ESEP. You may have noticed our nice paved driveway when you pulled in today. The potholes were removed, and so that was a good and positive thing. We're making repairs to concrete all throughout the district. That was part of our plan and part of our budget, so that's a good thing. Very excited about our HVAC work, our solar panels, everything that's going on. And just want to reiterate, this is the biggest project in facility structure work we're doing since the building of the primary school, which will be 23 in January. So it's a long time coming, and we're very excited to be bringing all these things to fruition for our students and our community. I want to give a big shout out to our custodians and maintenance staff, Nick Moretta as well, for everything that they're doing. They really are people who are in it literally up to their elbows in what they're doing this time of year. It's a lot of work, it's a lot of preparation, that, you know, it takes a lot to get the floors all shiny for the start of a school year, to get everything cleaned, all the desks, it's a lot. Delivering supplies, the teachers switch classrooms, all the things that they do. So I just want to, it doesn't go unnoticed and unrecognized, so thank everyone for their time and dedication. We're working to coordinate a presentation to the board on September 25th by Mr. Greg Burns, who is our senior representative, business representative from DCO Energy, who'll be able to give a comprehensive presentation to the community and the board about updates with ESIP. He'll have pictures and be able to give a detailed timeline of our ESIP project. The presentation will then be available on the website and to our school community so they can see the updates if you haven't been able to see them. Some of them are a little bit behind the scenes, so you don't see everything that's going on, but you'll definitely notice the improvements, which is great. That'll be a board meeting, September 25th, yes. We want to thank all of our parents, and we know it's August, and parents, I want to thank everyone for their patience as we're continuing our preparations for everything, the scheduling, everything that we're doing. We do anticipate that the parent portal opening the week of August 26th, when you can get access to everything. I know it's a very coveted date as to when it's going to happen, so there'll be a letter that goes out tomorrow from me with some reminders, some information, but we are looking at early in the week of August 26th for all that information to go home, so you can share that with your students and children as well. I also just want to share on this evening's agenda. Tonight there are two retirements that both I've worked very closely with for a long time. Joan Meyer, who is our Human Resources Secretary, I call her one of my two hands, who is our Human Resources Secretary, who is going to be retiring after 26 and a half years. Part of her time was spent not just in our office, but as an instructional assistant in the district. We call her the historian. She knows a lot about the district and in terms of personnel. I've never worked with someone of a higher quality, so I just want to thank her for all of her time and wish her the best of luck, happiness, and health in her retirement. I also want to call attention, also under number 1, Ms. Kathleen Condren, who has been our bookkeeper, payroll accountant, and assistant business office assistant prior to computers when payroll was done by hand. So she's been doing the work in this district for a really long time. We are really going to miss her and all that she's done for the district, specifically our staff in working with them. Payroll is a complicated process for all the employees in the districts, and she's done it with ease and grace and for a really long time. So we also wish Mrs. Kathy Condren the best of happiness, health, and good fortune in her retirement. And that concludes my superintendent's report. Excuse me.
Thank you very much. All right, that brings us to our comments from attending constituents on all subjects. Just a reminder, if you're going to make a comment, please stand and say your name and address for the record.
Phyllis Camera, 1 Round Hill Court. I'm speaking to express my deep disappointment and concern regarding the handling of the decision for the Board of Education position that was held by my late husband, John Camera. Yesterday, on August 13th at 11:54 p.m., I received an email from Vincent Marasco informing me that I was not selected for the position. Given that the new appointment was to be made the following day, I find it extremely troubling that such an important and sensitive decision was communicated so late at night. From a management perspective, this was a poorly timed decision that reflects a lack of consideration for the emotional impact on my family, especially given the timing, 2 months to the day after John's passing. I sincerely hope that this was not done intentionally, but the approach taken here certainly raises concern about the level of care and professionalism involved. Despite the way Dr. Garibay and the administration handled this, I wish the newly appointed board member, Rich, the best of luck. I hope you will make wise, conservative decisions for our children and residents, staying true to the Colts Kids First principles. I also invite you to reach out to me personally. Congratulations. In regards to item number 2 under personnel, when considering the financial and logistical aspects of our school district, which currently comprises 3 schools, approximately 1,000 students, the addition of a 4th counselor is unnecessary. And here's some reasons why that I'd like you to consider. Our district already has dedicated social workers and a child study team that are well equipped to handle a range of student needs, from emotional support to academic challenges. These professionals are specifically trained to provide counseling and intervention services, making an additional counselor redundant. In the event of a crisis, our district can rely on the expertise of Dr. Beck, our seasoned administrator, who has experience managing school-wide issues and can provide immediate support or guidance when necessary. Has any committee or our superintendent looked into utilizing shared service agreements? Rather than hiring a full-time counselor, we can maximize our budget by utilizing shared service agreements. Through partnerships with external organizations like Collier, we can access specialized counseling services on an as-needed basis. This approach ensures that our students receive high-quality support while keeping costs in check. The benefit of shared service agreements is that they allow us to pay only for the services that we use. We avoid the financial burden of providing full-time salaries and benefits to another staff member. This model offers flexibility, enabling us to adjust our resources based on actual demand rather than committing to a fixed expense. Our district must prioritize fiscal responsibility. With only 3 schools, the expense of adding a 4th counselor to administer SEL, social emotional learning, online surveys seems unnecessary, especially considering that after the Parent Academy, we learned that a large majority of Colts Neck parents prefer their children to spend less time on Chromebooks. It would also be helpful to know what percentage of parents, like myself, opt their children out of these online surveys. By choosing shared services instead, we can allocate funds more effectively to other critical areas, such as enhancing academic programs, focusing on interventions or enrichment, or upgrading facilities. In cases of acute need, our existing staff, including social workers, CST, child study team members, and Dr. Beck, can collaborate effectively to manage situations. Should additional help be required, our shared service agreement provides us with the flexibility to bring in external counselors temporarily without the commitment of a full-time hire. So I am asking that for the vote for item number 2 under personnel maybe be held off until the next meeting when these other questions can be answered. And I just want to remind the board that once the superintendent fills a position, only she has the authority to remove that person and eliminate the position, leaving the board with no control. In contrast, with a shared service agreement, it allows you as the board for annual review and reassessment. So certain questions I have. How effectively are the 3 existing counselors being utilized? Are they consistently busy, or do they have available capacity? What are the current counselor to student ratios, and how do these compare to recommended guidelines? Are there specific benchmarks that show our current ratios are insufficient? What evidence do we have that the current counseling staff is unable to meet the needs of students? How do our existing social workers and child study teams contribute to student support? Could their roles be expanded or better utilized to alleviate any perceived gaps in counseling services? Have there been past crises or high demand situations? How have past crises or high demand situations been handled with the current staff? Has there been any instance when the existing team was overwhelmed or unable to provide adequate support? How frequently are external counselors or crisis intervention teams, such as Dr. Beck or shared services, called in to assist? Could these resources be more effectively used in lieu of hiring an additional counselor? What would be the full cost, including salary and benefits, of adding another counselor? How does this compare to the cost of utilizing shared services as needed? How would the addition of another counselor impact the district's budget? Are there other areas that might suffer as a result of this expenditure? Have we explored all possible alternatives to hiring an additional counselor, such as increasing collaboration among current staff, offering professional development to enhance existing services, or increasing the use of shared services? Are there other support structures or programs that could be implemented to address any identified gaps in student support, such as peer counseling, mentoring programs, or partnerships with local health mental organizations? What specific outcomes are we aiming to achieve by adding another counselor? Are these outcomes clearly defined, and do we have the evidence that a 4th counselor is the best or only way to achieve them? And how will the effectiveness of an additional counselor be measured? What metrics will we used to determine whether the investment has been justified. So, thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Mrs. Cameron. I know that historically there has not been a back and forth, but I would like to address a couple of the points that you brought up. First, in speaking with your concerns over the handling of the appointment, I'm not going to get into the details because I'm not able to get into the details of it, but I would like to share with the public that this was not a decision that this board came to quickly or lightly. We did deliberate in an executive session last week. I did personally reach out as board president individually to the board members to discuss this further prior to the executive session and afterwards. So we did take even, I'd say, in excess of an approach as we did to the appointment that I was there for last year in the beginning of the year. So I have to disagree with you that there was any mishandling of this appointment. But of course, if you have that concern, I would love the opportunity to discuss that further with you. I don't want it to be perceived that there was any mishandling or anything that was inappropriate about this at all. It's only my word that I can give you, but I can assure you that everything was followed to the T for that. And of course, if anyone in the public has any concerns like this, please reach out to us. As far as the timing of the email, I apologize for that. We wanted to make sure that the appointment could take place today at the meeting, which we had anticipated, and I shared that with the public that was part of our anticipation, was to have this appointment at the meeting this evening. There were several reasons for that, but mostly just so that the work of the board could continue efficiently and effectively moving forward. As far as the counselor position goes for you, I'm not sure if when we get to the personnel, if you want to speak a little bit more to that, but what I can speak to is that many of the concerns and questions that you shared with us this evening, I have reached out to our superintendent to discuss in detail because I did share some of those same concerns, and I did receive answers about those questions and those concerns. I cannot speak for individual other board members and whether or not they did, but I can share that our superintendent, Mary Jane, has made herself available over the last several weeks. Over the summer, we do Thursday updates versus Friday updates, and she has provided extensive background about this position. And I would like to share with the public that this is not a new position, and it was something that was budgeted for. So what you're seeing on the agenda this evening, much like many of our personnel items, they're already part of our budget. These are not in excess of our budget. And again, if you wouldn't mind, either now or when we get to the personnel, if there's anything else that you would like to add to that, because I'm sure you can add a little bit more to that. But again, if the public has any questions about any of these things, as I stated in my president's report, when you see these agendas come live, please reach out to our board. That's what we're here for. I know I can speak for Mary Jane when I say that's what she's here for as well, is if the public has any questions about these, there's things that we can share with the public, and we're happy to do so that these concerns are addressed. Sure. I'll let Mary Jane take over.
So, thank you. Yes, over the past, you've seen in the superintendent's updates, there have been questions, and a lot of information that I presented to the board in order to get to the moment of, making a recommendation on the agenda. And if there were further questions from board members, as we know, it was removed from the agenda and then put back again to a time, because I want to make sure when I am making a recommendation for an appointment for a staff member, we know that this is an investment, right? And we know that. That said, Mrs. Ramirez is correct in that this was not a new position. It's been in place for 2 years. This would be the 3rd year of it. And as per the recommendations that were presented to the board in the spring from the Parent Advisory, the number 1 recommendation was a continuation and expansion of our social emotional learning programs. This counselor is not just for counseling sessions. The counselor, as I've explained many times, does an implementation of a curriculum that we worked very hard to identify in support of our needs. If you were to look at it in terms of character education, it's all about, that's what it's about. It is a public document, and you'll see on the agenda tonight, I am also making a recommendation in working and hearing the needs and concerns of the board brought forth through the community. We're linking it into our health, comprehensive health and education, physical education standards, of which there is an opt-out option for. So this year, we're gonna work with parents, and if parents feel strongly about not having children participate, or opting out for different reasons, we're giving them that option to do so, if that's something that they feel strongly about. So that's what this is about. You know, it's about finding a middle ground and still continuing to respond to with the work of the parents that we worked with throughout the year, and doing more for our students. We are about educating the whole child in this district. We do provide, and I would be happy to sit with any staff, any parent, to talk about the extensive additional interventions and enrichments that we offer to students on a yearly basis. After-school programs that are designed specifically to target different skills or enhance different opportunities for students. This is another one of those programs, you know, where students, in terms of communications, it's about how, it's another layer of how we address the whole child in terms of our initiatives for students. So, as I said, I will continue to always make myself available to the board and answer any questions regarding it. I do firmly believe in this work, and you know, I feel that it benefits the children on multiple levels.
Dr. Garber, is there anything that you could expand on as far as shared services agreement being able to handle these aspects, and if there's any difficulties with that?
Shared service agreements are for services, they're not for instructional programs, they're not contracted instructors. So yes, of course, there's multiple opportunities, and we do take advantages of shared service agreements or contracted services with regard to occupational therapies, physical therapies. We do a lot of that. We've done contracted agreements for custodians when we've needed a shortage for that. So the board and the administration has made several recommendations. Instructional assistants, when we can't find an instructional assistant. We utilize contracted services for multiple areas throughout the district for that. For this specific position, it would not be my recommendation to do a contracted service because it would not suit the instructional needs. And I would want the board, on behalf of the board, to have greater internal controls over what's being done.
Thank you for addressing that.
Thank you, Dr. Garvey. Are there any other comments from attending constituents? Seeing that there are none, I'm going to close the comments from attending constituents portion of our agenda. And we will move on to action items. I'm looking for a motion to move action item number 1, superintendent action item number 1, sorry.
Second.
Are there any questions or comments about action item number 1 on the agenda?
Yes, I have a comment on this. I'm actually going to recuse myself from this vote. I do not support our district being so, emphasizing on the CEL program. I much rather see our district focus on fundamentals and targeted interventions with math and reading. So I will recuse myself as to, I guess not hurt the vote if, somebody else, agrees with this, but I won't be true to myself by voting to approve this, since it does have to do with the SEL, and I really don't believe as firmly as the district does in promoting that program. So I will recuse.
Is it a recuse or are you?
Abstain.
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 I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yes.
Just a comment regarding
Oh,
Robert's Rules of Order as a matter of housekeeping. So now that Mr. Whitberg is seated,
Oh.
I will call him
Yes.
as part of the roll call vote, but it is appropriate and suggested that he abstains from
Yes.
most of the votes because that
don't have any
business has not
information.
been. Okay, thank you.
Oh, thank you. All right, any other questions or comments about action item number 1? All right, Vince, may I please have a roll call for action item number 1?
Yes, superintendent's action item. Mrs. Denoya.
Yes.
Mrs. Dillon.
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Dimes.
Yes.
Mr. Orico?
Yes.
Mrs. Ramirez?
Yes.
Mr. Rignetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Volpe?
Abstain.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Wickberg?
Abstain.
Thank you. The motion did carry.
Thank you. All right, I'm looking for a motion to move items 1 through 3 under curriculum.
Motion.
Second.
Any questions or comments about curriculum items 1 through 3? No, seeing that there are none. Vince, may I please have a roll call?
Yes, you may. Mrs. Denoya?
Yes.
Mrs. Dillon?
Yes.
Mrs. Dimes? Thank you. Mr. Orico?
Yes.
Mrs. Ramirez?
Yes.
Mr. Rignetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Volpe?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Wickberg?
Yes.
That was a yes?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion did carry.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Rico, may I please have a motion to move items 1 through 6 under finance?
Motion.
Second.
Any questions or comments about finance items 1 through 6? All right, Vince, may I please have a roll call?
Yes,
Oh, wait,
you-
I'm sorry,
Oh,
Amy has
oh,
a
I'm so
question.
sorry, Amy. Forgot you guys were there, actually.
I'm sorry, I just had to, I have to switch back to the question, item number 5 for Go Guardian.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's okay, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
So Go Guardian, could you just explain a little bit more about that program with the content filtering and monitoring? I think it speaks to some of the technology concerns that we've had.
Sure. Can you speak to that?
It includes
Yes. GoGuardian is the system that we use internally to monitor student activity on Chromebooks. It includes usage, app accessibility, timing, where time on the Chromebooks are used. It allows us to filter and determine IP addresses. It allows us to do a lot of things with regards of internal controls. Keep in mind too, when it comes to cybersecurity, our information technology manager, Dominic Petrillo, Phil Capasso work very hard and diligently to maintain our infrastructure, our Google Learning environment, which is a closed domain, meaning that when children are on or accessing logged in, they are not able to email or have access outside through different web filters that we use, nor can someone get in, okay? We've also made improvements for password protections and different things throughout the years as recommended, and observed in terms of things that are happening. So it is it's part of our internal controls for the monitoring and assessment of our Chromebook usage. You'll see the board, we've also reported on our updates. We are investigating and looking into the GoGuardian parent app, which allows controls that are similar to that the administration, so that parents can have direct access to what's happening through GoGuardian, very similar to what's happening with our, that we can see, so that parents can see what students are accessing throughout the school day as well. So that's something we're also looking into with potentially rolling out, in the fall sometime, so we can kind of pilot it and then look at it that way. Does that answer your question, Mrs. Dimes? I'm sorry. Okay, good.
Finish taking the roll call for that?
We didn't start.
We didn't start it, okay, sorry.
If there were other,
That was just the question, okay. All right, any other questions or comments? No? All right. Vince, may I please have a roll call for finance items 1 through 6?
yes, you may. Mrs. Denoya?
Yes.
Mrs. Dillon?
Yes.
Mrs. Dimes?
Yes.
Mr. Orico?
Yes.
Mrs. Ramirez?
Yes.
Mr. Rignetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Volpe?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Wickberg?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carried.
Thank you. Angelique, I'm looking for a motion to move policy item number 1 on the agenda.
Motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for policy item number 1 on the agenda? Which is a big one. Nope. All right. Vince, may I please have a roll call?
Yes. Policy item 1, Mrs. Denoya?
Yes.
Mrs. Dillon,
Yes.
Mrs. Dimes,
Yes.
Mr. Rico,
Yes.
Mrs. Ramirez,
Yes.
Mr. Rignetta,
Yes.
Mrs. Volpe,
Yes.
Mr. Walsh,
Yes.
Mr. Wickford. Thank you, the motion passed.
Thank you. All right. Kevin, may I please have a motion to move personnel items 1 through 10 on the agenda?
Motion.
Second. Thank you. Any questions or comments for personnel items 1 through 10?
Comment.
Yes, Allison?
I would like to thank Mrs. Meyer and Mrs. Condren for their extensive years of service here, and I'm speaking for the microphone. And for the people in the back, no, I'm just kidding. I would like to thank them for their tremendous length of service, for the value that they have brought to this district for so many years, and we will surely miss them come January. So maybe there will be baked goods. That's it.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for personnel items 1 through 12, 1 through 10? Oh.
Yes, I have,
Yes.
some questions.
Yes.
Under the, what is number, under number 4,
Mhm.
the lunch recess aid.
Yes.
First of all, I'm glad to see people applying, and the positions being filled, that's number 1. My concern is, for this lunch aid, it's showing that she's getting $18.70 per hour. It's been brought to my attention actually a while ago that some of the aides are getting like $15 with, I believe, like a 2-cent raise, and I'm just curious why this young lady is receiving this when we have aides here that have been working quite a bit of years and getting 15 and change. So what's the discrepancy with, the rate, since this lady is just starting at our district?
Placement on the guide.
Yes, please.
Placement on the guide, a transportation aid is part of the CNTA support staff collective bargaining agreement. Placement on the guide is based on prior experience. So there are people who have prior experience, and depending upon that experience, whether it be a bus aid to a teacher, they're provided with and given credit for prior experience that they bring to the district.
Now, how do you differentiate, let's say, I don't know how many years the lunch aides are here, I don't know any of them, but if someone's here 4 years or 5 years and is only getting $15 or $16, and they've been established already in the district, they're familiar with the children, the teachers, the community, I still don't understand why she would be getting that just because she's had experience at another district. And I'm just being respectful, I'm just concerned
No,
why
understood.
our aides are getting a lot less than this.
So our steps don't equate necessarily to experience of years. And what we try to do is we try to be equitable and fair as people are progressing through the district, knowing like this year the guide started on July 1st, was condensed for steps 1 through 10 were condensed. So there was through the negotiations process, there was a condensing of the guide, which through that movement, and it's based on experience and years of experience. So this particular person, may have had extensive experience bringing to the district.
All right, so for our aides, I know they're a union, or, okay, so does the union fight for their raises? How does that work?
They're negotiated.
They're negotiated?
Correct.
Okay, so when they're getting like a 2-cent raise, the unions negotiated that raise for 2 cents or 5 cents?
It was a collective bargaining agreement that was agreed to by the union as well as the board.
Does that fall under the teachers' union, or does that fall under like an
It's
aide
all the
union?
CNTEA, and then there's a certificated staff teacher's guide, contract, and support staff. So they fall into support staff.
Okay, so the union represents them and gets them a 2-cent raise. I just want to clarify that the Colts Neck Township
They
Education
agreed to the
Association-
guide,
Okay.
and they are voting membership they are a voting part of the membership.
Okay, it doesn't really seem very fair, but okay. Thank you for explaining it.
Can I just ask a question for you? The steps and the guide that we follow, that's, my understanding is it's pretty unique to our district, correct? Not all districts have that same.
Everyone's guide is developed differently.
Right.
Yeah. and-
Right, so ours is unique to this district.
Correct.
Right.
Okay, I have two questions regarding number two. For the public notice, have the other counselors been asked if they could handle the particulars that this position would handle? If they could or couldn't handle it?
Yes.
Okay, understood. And I guess they said that they wouldn't be efficiently able to handle it.
They have this was an enhancement or an additional program to responsibilities. If it were to be addressed, if we would not be able to do it, which is why there was a recommendation years ago to add a counselor. So no, there were their daily responsibilities and duties that fall in addition to just counseling. And I want to do a good job communicating with our community about what that entails. I don't, because I want everyone to have a good understanding of the roles and responsibilities of everyone in this district, so that people feel as though that the investment that the board makes in the personnel who are here that adds value to the community and the experiences that children have every day in this district. So the answer to your question is no. We would not be able to implement the program without this person.
Now, was the program not able to run efficiently enough last year, especially the month of May, which is SEL month, without this instructor? So, counselor, was it not able to run efficiently enough?
The activities didn't, when the position was resigned, the person resigned it in December.
Right.
So the additional programs and things like that did not run in the spring.
So what happened, so everyone knows, what happened in May was taken care of by, obviously not this position, but it was able to be handled properly.
It was 2 different scenarios that took place, correct. For the month of June, it was like the end of May, beginning of June, we had a counselor that went out on medical leave. That medical leave took away a counselor from the district, existing from the district, so there were 2 counselors within the district at that point.
Right, but also in the month of May, like, the kids learned a lot of SEL stuff in the month of May, which is basically, May is basically SEL month. Wasn't those programs able to run efficiently at the time?
No, we didn't have we didn't have this counselor to do it, no.
Okay.
No, no.
Any other questions or comments for personnel?
Mrs.
Oh,
Dimes.
I'm so sorry. Yes, Mrs. Dimes.
Thank you. Sorry, I can't talk very loud. I just wanted to say that I'm actually thrilled to see that number 2 has been added back onto the agenda. When it was taken off, we did see that there was a lot of upset parents in the district that actually did speak at that meeting. I know that during COVID and after, there's been talk about learning loss, and I think our test scores have shown that we've kind of bridged that gap. But our HIV, the suspensions, the list goes on. It shows that we are still having trouble with the mental health of children in our school, and that having this 4th district, this counselor is crucial to our district. I understand that it adds a dollar value that's already been budgeted, but we really can't put a price on our children's mental health. We added it because it was something that we saw was a need in the district, and I'm just very pleased to see that we have it added back on.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments about personnel items 1 through 10? All right. Vince, may I please have a roll call for personnel items 1 through 10?
Yes, you may. Mrs. Denoya.
Yes.
Mrs. Dillon.
Yes.
Mrs. Dimes.
Yes.
Mr. Arico.
No to number 2, yes to 1, yes to 3 to 10.
Thank you. Mrs. Ramirez.
Yes.
Mr. Rignetta.
Yes, yes 1 to 6, recuse number 7, yes 8 to 10.
Thank you. Mrs. Volpe.
Yes to everything, no to number 2.
Mr. Walsh.
No to number 2, yes to everything else.
Mr. Whitford.
Yes.
Okay, motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so because this evening we're going to have a work session and we have an agenda for it, we're going to do new business now, and then we're going to take a brief recess, just to let everyone kind of reset. I hope the public public stays for our work session, because it's our first one, I'm very excited for it. But if you do not want to stay for it, I will not give you permission to leave, but you may leave, I guess. And so, right now, we'll just move on to new business. Oh, yes, Amy, I'm so sorry. You have to get a flag or something, because I don't see you. Oh, no.
I think you're muted.
You're muted.
Mrs. Dimes.
Well, that's the reason why you can't hear me. Sorry, I wanted to bring up, there was a post that was sent to me on Facebook about some cybersecurity and our kids' passwords, and I just wanted to bring it up because it does seem like something that we can address very quickly, and perhaps we could add it into our work session this evening about children's passwords on the Chromebooks. It's my understanding, because I do have older children that have the Chromebooks, that when you do have their password, that you can change it if it's a concern. And that there are new measures that are also being added in with the lunch cards and things of that sort, so that we do have a little bit more control over the security. So if we're going into a work session, I would like to suggest that, number one, we add to communications that we do inform the parents of if we do need to change any type of passwords, that they do have the ability to do that. And then also perhaps to security, to buildings and ground safety and security, we do add to discuss the layers that we're adding into with the lunch cards and things of that sort, to make sure that our kids are safeguarded and people aren't getting their passwords.
Thank you.
Did you get all that?
Yeah, I think so. If not, you'll be here to discuss it. You'll remind me. All right. All right, so any other new business?
Yes, yes. I know the Naval Weapons Station representative, how are we making out with the assistance for defraying our costs for the lunches and any school resources they may need, school books, supplies?
Yes, we've been speaking with Ms. West, who's been with, Jones, who's been with us and meeting with the administration, and speaking about, we reached out, I think I mentioned that we spoke with the representation from YMCA, before and after care, that when they conveyed that they have a 10% discount for before and after care, if that's something that they want. I did reach out to the PTO regarding their supply people, and the company does not offer a discount for supplies, but we're going to continue to work with our partnerships. Yeah, so we're going to continue to work with our liaison to make sure everybody has what they need for the start of the school year.
All right, thank you.
Yes.
Any other new business?
Mrs. Murphy, do you want to talk about the student liaison?
Oh, yes. Yes, I just want to touch briefly on August 8th, we had met Mrs. Denoya, Dr. Garibay, and Dr. Rigby, and myself. We met for about an hour to discuss the student liaison position. It was a very positive meeting. We are all on board to actually, bring structure to it. Dr. Garibay and Dr. Rigby actually had a lot of great ideas to add to it. And, she first started by getting feedback from the 3 liaisons. Was it 3 or 4? I'm sorry, 4. I apologize. From the 4 liaisons that graduated, 8th grade, and I believe we had one person respond that they were really happy with the program, and they wanted to see, to be able to participate more. Like I said in the past meetings, since I'm a fairly new board member, I'm on 6 months, it was very difficult to learn everything, and then when I brought this to fruition, it was a lot for me to try to, get it under some type of, structure. So now with the help of the administration, we are going to work with them and add a bunch of, committees, or we're going to try to get them on board with the committee. So instead of coming here and speaking about, problems and this and that, Dr. Rigby had a great idea. He's going to teach them how to go about bringing it to fruition instead of just coming and stating it. If it's something to do with buildings and grounds, the student liaison could work directly with Kevin. Something with financial, like they want to bring, something on board. They realize we need a budget for it. They could speak to Jason, and we're gonna actually go over, and please interrupt me if I'm missing something. Since we did lose the 4 board members, I actually recommended that we stick with just the 6 that we have to make it a little bit more controllable, until we get everything, structured. So we're gonna keep the 6, and then come January, we're gonna do it just like, a board position. There'll be, a letter will be sent out by Dr. Garabay, and if they wanna participate, the term will be, from January to January. So, let me just see the other, things we went over. So the replacement, the terms, Dr. Rigby going over that. I think that was it. I don't know, Mrs. Duroy, if I'm missing something, you were there, if you want to add something that I may have missed, but, like I said, it was a very, very, positive meeting. We're so excited to get this underway again, and we're looking forward to having the kids back in September. And I appreciate your work, because you guys are really gonna be doing the hands-on more than we are, so I appreciate you doing it. And all the people that are on the board, I think we are going to, actually ask if you guys are able to, become mentors, since there's 9 of us and there's only 6. If there's time restrictions for you, and instead of, making them fall by the waistline, I'd be able to take maybe two children to mentor. And, Allison, I'm sure, I don't want to answer for you, but I'm sure you could take 2 maybe, and, people who work long hours that can't do it, so instead of like not ignoring them, but not being able to be as involved, we can pick up that slack, so, everybody gets a,
Yeah, we'll make it work.
Yeah, we'll make it work, definitely. So,
And then
yeah.
if I may add, there was a good idea that was had too about them through their activity, right? That they can bring a plan how to do something or speaking everything, that they can come and give reports on what they're doing. We gave an example, we talked so highly of the students, the different ideas that they had brought forward, and then they can come and report to us, to the board, about how they're going about taking action on those things. So it's almost like taking ownership and participating in the effectuation of change in their environments.
Thank you so much for that update. I appreciate that, Angeli.
What's that?
I appreciate that.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you for the update.
Yep.
I'm happy to hear that. It will continue, and that the students will have a little bit more structure, and we'll be able to guide them a little bit better. Any other new business for the board? All right, so why don't we go ahead, we'll take that, let's just say 5-minute recess, and then we'll hop into our work session. All right?
And as a reminder, we'll be continuing
Oh, yes,
our live stream.
yes, as a reminder, we will be continuing the live stream for the work session. This is not an executive session, it's a work session, so everyone's welcome to join. Thank you.
I'm gonna just mute this while I'm going, okay?
I'm just gonna tuck it in.
I'm gonna mute it first.
I'll be back in
You guys
5.
better come back. Okay, that's fine. I was in the way of the goodness. This is like an executive. Oh, he came out like that. Yeah, let me show you, I'll do something here. Look at that guy, he looks like Elvis. He came out with that, and he never lost it.
Never lost it.
Never lost it. My older one came out with a lot, not quite as much as him, but he lost it.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like on his back, like that's how long it is. It like covers his ears.
Does he sleep okay?
He actually sleeps.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, her husband says she's on the trip baby. Oh, yeah, right, so I mean, he's great, love him, wonderful, but,
All right.
you know, he really actually was like 2, he wasn't sleeping through the night.
Yeah.
He always gave me a hard time, like, he would wake up like once, you know, like, as he got older. This one sleeps through the night, like 9 p.m., and then he'll stay asleep until like 6 p.m.
Oh, that's so nice. Yeah.
I'm blessed, yeah.
My youngest is the worst sleeper, which I really thought, like, he's my third, so you kind of feel like you're an expert. Like, nope, I got this. No, he's 2, and he'll sleep through the night maybe like 3 nights in a row.
Okay.
And then he'll go through a week of like waking up every single night. And he's been like that since birth. Like I ended up bringing him into my bed because I got to a point where I was like, I can't, I'm gonna drop him. Like I'm falling asleep in the chair while I'm doing nighttime nursing.
I've been there, you know.
Yeah.
Not that I have got, but I know you're so
Yeah,
tired,
yeah.
you're delirious.
Yeah.
You know, you're like, oh.
So I started bringing him into bed with me. And like, some people say don't do that, but I'm like, this is the only way I can survive this.
I don't, I'm in survival mode. You're like, how's it going? You're like, some days are great, and other days I'm like, I'm not sure what's happening today. Actually, I just started going back to work today.
Oh, okay.
So that's like a shock to the system. I'm like, yeah, and I have to do all the mom stuff. And
Yeah.
work stuff. Oh,
Yeah. It's a lot.
It is,
Yeah.
I love what I do, so.
Well, that makes it worth it.
It does, it does.
Makes the balance worth it all.
It really does, it does, so, yeah.
Good, I'm glad it's all
Yeah.
going lovely. The kids are great. They're like, they're amazing. They're like so tiring, but amazing at the same time.
I say there's nothing, nothing harder that I will do, but nothing that brings me more reward.
Yeah.
And joy, like just pure, like utter joy, like it's like such an indescribable feeling. And then, you know, I say this and I truly mean it, like what, I will never do anything else in my life that's greater than being a mom.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm in healthcare, like I do amazing things for people, but there's still nothing greater than that. That's like my ultimate mission. Like there's no degree that I'll get, there's no award that I'll win.
Yeah.
So,
Now, since you're in healthcare, is it like when you deliver your baby, are you judging the nurses that are helping you? I don't know.
No, they're part of my
You did not do
team.
this right.
No, they're part of my team. I don't do that. I'm an occupational therapist.
Oh, okay.
So, and, you know, I've done clinicals in the hospital. I did a little bit of per diem in the hospital, but I don't work in the hospital.
Okay.
And certainly not on an all floor. So, no. And like, that's your thing. It's not like I'm just theatrical to it. Again, I did clinicals in it. I understand it. Could I do it? Sure. But like, would I be great at it? Probably not. And would I need more training and like re-education? Absolutely, 10,000%. But that's like not my wheelhouse.
Yeah.
So, you know, I know, you know,
I wish I had gone, 'cause that was, you played every
So my,
You need to mark it up.
yes.
Oh.
Right here.
We know, we wrote a tribute song to him, he's gonna do it on Saturday. I don't know if it's
Like, we don't care. He's younger than I. He's 35. He's the guy who trivia.
September to December.
Yeah, it was that.
My nephew, my sister, purple, you know, went to that show.
It was great. I will say, like, you're like, I can say I saw it. It was good. And now you're like, do some of the, not even, bananas. It was good, yeah. Say hi to everyone. You're gonna come back. I know, actually. That one was.
And
Ready?
Jason.
I don't have many powers. Yeah. Oh, no one else.
Yeah.
That's my husband's cousin.
No way, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
When she saw the, yes. Do you want me to make that? That's what you were looking for. No, do you mind? Okay.
Yep.
You need them? Is it quicker to do? Yeah.
I have
Yeah, print and then start. We'll talk about, this stuff first, that you brought up. Okay. All right. So, on the agenda, there is the work session for the structure of the board, which we will get to, but I wanted to, first we'll touch on the communications and the security topics that Amy brought up to be discussed during the work session. So, work session, this is where we are, we're talking, we're communicating about whatever's on the agenda, really. So I know, like I said, I know in this case we have just the structure of the board, but I don't mind adding this. And so it'll just be an open discussion. That's all we're doing. There's no formal action taken. This is for us to discuss, for you to get any opinions, any concerns out for different things. And then these items will then be taken, depending on what they are or what we, how our discussion goes. They can be put into a committee meeting, or they can be put on another agenda for an action item, depending on, again, based on what they are and how the discussion goes. So as far as the children's passwords on the Chromebooks go, so for communications, and Amy, feel free to jump in if I'm not communicating this correctly as you articulated it. But I believe what you wanted to discuss is potentially.
She can't hear.
She can't hear. Oh, sorry. You guys were muted. All right. I'm not going to repeat all of that. I was just getting into what we were doing right now. But the communications concern that you brought up for the children's passwords on the Chromebook. So we'll open that up for a discussion as far as what that looks like now, I guess, where we want it to go, if there's any concerns with it, and then we can decide if we want this to be something that we continue to work on in a work session, if we want it to go into a committee, if we want something to be addressed more formally on an agenda. So, open for discussion.
I can start it.
Yeah, sure.
So I can speak to that. We can, the one thing is we don't typically in public session or in front of the public speak about our security measures, whether they be physical security and or cybersecurity for various reasons, because it's a public meeting. And all the information, as you know, with Mr. Walsh and Building and Ground Safety and Security is not for public consumption for various reasons. I can share with the board through the communications committee and provide with an update of what we do provide with regards to cybersecurity, our firewalls, our infrastructures, all of the things like that. We've also attended several, I've have attended, as well as our technology department attends, several trainings at the state level with, and the acronym is going to run out of my name, I would have been prepared, I'm sorry about this, no, is the New Jersey Coalition for, it's actually basically cybersecurity. And they offer several partnerships where they will do free assessments of district's cybersecurity and walk through. So we're looking into that more as an opportunity for our district. It's serious. It's a serious concern, excuse me. You know, there a ransomware, all of the things. And districts surrounding us have had situations where they found themselves to be vulnerable. And every time one of those happens, there's usually a debriefing that happens at the state level with district leadership as well as with technology departments in ways that we can continue to harden those infrastructures through cybersecurity. So that is something that we are consistently looking at, and not just through the lens of our students, but also our personnel information with regards to access. We have a lot of confidential information, which is what, you know, it maintained about our staff, and we also want to make sure that we are protecting everyone, including our students, obviously our students, from having access. What's nice about the Google platform, the domain that we use, it is a protected, we are encapsulated in the Google domain. And what I mean by that is like exactly what I said. A child who has a Coltsneck password and is part of the systems with the email cannot email someone who does not have that, and a person on the outside cannot email or access the child. Through the years, we've learned lessons of it as we've done that, where there may have been a sense where students, let me start by saying any student who deliberately violates the one-to-one device agreement or makes an attempt to hack, quote unquote, or access another student's information or be as another student, that is a violation of the code of conduct, and it is dealt with in the manner that administration chooses to deal with, through a code of conduct, through discipline, which is also not necessarily public information. But part of our program is to teach kids not just how to access information and utilize digital resources, but it's also part of being digital citizens. That's also part of our responsibility as we're going through that. So any violation of a child, you know, through that is handled by the administration as a code of conduct. The other part of that is in terms of making adaptations to things that we have done through the years. That's definitely something that I can share with the board.
Doctor, we also have a great IT team
We do.
on it and proactive and maybe making recommendations to harden our firewall and be exposed to any ransomware.
Absolutely. I'm looking for those programs when that's something that I think we've done. We've been, you know, much appreciated to Don Petrillo, who's been very proactive with Mr. Capasso about speaking with and working directly with Mr. Marasco about specifically with staff and student information, taking those precautions as we've gone through, you know, different situations and watched and learned from other districts as well. You know, and that's something that we will continue to progress on and continue to stay on top of.
Thank you. Brenna, of course.
Hi. I had a question. I remember we had that technology committee like a couple years ago. Is that something that you guys do regularly every few years to kind of touch base on the programs that we want to implement and whatnot? I just couldn't remember if that was like a regular committee that came up or...
That was part of a long planning committee, yeah. So we put together a long-range kind of like technology plan,
Right.
where we did a complete audit of all the digital programs that we have, the usage of the teachers, which we can tell through the applications and the vendors. They have usage, how many times it's accessed by students. And what we did was we looked at not just devices, but we looked at the applications. We also looked at the different software that we use too, whether we use, you know, Genesis, whether we, you know, all the different things that are IXL, all the things that are available. What's the usage? Because again, it's our responsibility to get our return on our investment. And if there's only a small group of teachers that are utilizing or want access to an application for a student as a supplemental learning resource, it might not be worth the recommendation. So that year, as well as year after year, we've continually revisited that plan to see like where, and monitoring that to see where and when we can make adaptations to those resources and or devices.
Right.
As a matter of fact, one of them is sitting in the back of the room here. We were for many years investing in short throw mount projectors. And through the creativity of our technology department, Mr. Petrillo and Mr. Capasso, we do that for a fraction of the cost of what a throw mount projector is. And we've been replacing those year after year in classrooms. So, continually looking at savings, continuing looking at better and more efficient ways to do things.
Thank you.
So to answer your question, let me answer your question directly. It is a possibility. You know, we do revisit internally, and as things that are going on, one of the things that I've reported in my updates is that Mr. Capasso is actively working and partnering with an individual who is also a parent in the district who works closely with Monmouth University, a representative in Lincoln there, and looking at policies and practices related to AI in schools. So that is something we want to, stay ahead of and be looking at as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So it sounds like there's a lot that goes into the security of our Chromebooks, both for the students and for the teachers. And we're continuously monitoring that and looking for ways to improve it and making sure that there's no gaps or holes or anything in that.
But what we can certainly do is, I think the recommendation was through the Communications Committee, be providing additional information and just kind of
To the
outline
parents.
everything like that. And
Or to the
exactly.
community.
Right.
Okay. Is there any other discussion that we want to have on that? No? Kevin?
As the doctor was saying, a lot of the cybersecurity issues are not to be publicly discussed.
Right.
Any of our plans going forward.
That being said, though, again, I'm just going to reiterate and touch on what I said earlier during this meeting. If there's ever any concerns that our community, our parents have, bring those concerns to us as a board. We want to know about them, we want to address them.
And specific concerns. When
Yes.
incidents occur,
Yes,
the administration responses and
yes,
so.
of course. All right, so let's, we'll take a straw poll here for this to be a further discussion for the Communications Committee to discuss and plan if and when we send out a communication to the community, which I think seems feasible, but can we just go down the list and say whether or not we're kind of in favor of that? Again, this is a straw poll, not a formal vote. Or is everyone in favor of it? Is that an easier way to do this? Is everyone in favor of that?
Yes.
Yes? Okay.
Yes.
So just for clarification, Jessica,
Yes.
as president, you can make the recommendation for the communications committee to do that.
Yes, I'm aware.
Okay.
But I'd like to have the input from the board. Make sure everyone's on board with it.
That's fine. I'm just
No
letting you
pun
know.
intended.
Amy and Brenna, you ladies are okay with that? Okay.
Yes, and I do, one question that I just thought of, you brought up chain of command before, and
Yes.
when you were just mentioning, if there is a concern with cybersecurity, and Dr. Garabay, what do you suggest on this too? If somebody does have a concern, who should they go to first? This doesn't really feel like a teacher thing first. Is this one of those situations where they should kind of jump a little further to the top? I just was curious your opinion.
I think it depends. If it's directly with a student and a correlation, that should go through the teacher or the administrator in the building first. If it's a broader conversation, they can certainly bring it to me or Mr. Capasso, and through me, I'll facilitate communication to the appropriate technology personnel.
Cool, thank you.
Maybe that can be something that's also included in a communication. Okay, all right. Amy, does that fully address what, yeah, we're good? Yeah, okay, all right. So moving on, does everyone have those? Okay.
I'm going to print them
Oh,
out.
okay, okay. All right. So Mary Jane is actually going to get for everyone on the board here two presentations here from NJSBA about best practice for effective committees for if we are a board of committees versus a committee of the whole presentation. So you will all recall, with the exception of Richard, that, do you like Richard or Rich? Does it not matter?
Rich is fine.
Okay, Rich. In the beginning of this year, we did have Tim Tehan come and give us a presentation on the committee of a whole. And so we should all be fairly familiar with that. Mary Jane also includes this in her weekly updates for the board for all of us to reference. So for the purpose of tonight, in order to be good stewards of everyone's time, what I'd like to do is to discuss if anyone has, well, I guess a few things. Let's start with concerns in the way that we are currently operating. I think that's a good place to start. And then I'd like to move into, based off of that discussion, where we as a board want to direct, or how we want to direct our energy moving forward. Just to recap, during this presentation, our field service representative, Tim Tehan, made very clear, while there is very clear differences in a committee of a whole versus board of committees, there's no real right and wrong way to do this, and we certainly can, for the needs of our board, pick and choose different aspects of it. I do think that perhaps getting a little bit more structure involved would be helpful for most of us, but I think that making a decision that suits the needs of our board currently, and I think we have a lot that we have to take into consideration. So I think in order to do that, we should hear some of the concerns that some of us as a board have, and then we can go from there. So that would be my suggestion, to start with those concerns. Like I said, Mary Jane's going to print out these presentations so that you have them in front of you to kind of compare and contrast while we go through this. But let me have them. Concerns, comments, what we like, what we don't like. Amy?
Yeah, so as I've spoken up at almost every single meeting since we changed to a committee of the whole, that I don't feel that we're really doing a lot of work as board together. I think moving to the board of a whole was to have transparency and have these work sessions. But what it's doing is really cutting down on the amount of meetings that we've actually had and the work that we have been doing. I personally have only attended 2 committee meetings, and this is our first work session. So I think that we're missing out on a lot of work that could have been done. Vinny and I had a great meeting with communications and talked about a lot of great programs that I think, had we had some meetings before or had these in work sessions, we could have essentially added these programs to the school year that's upcoming, instead of having now to push it out in a next year's budget and things about it. So those are just little nuances of what could be done and could have been done.
Could you give me some examples of some of the things that you feel weren't done that could have been done?
Yeah, so we had, as Vinny reported out on the last meeting, we talked about some of the apps, what Mary Jane had talked about briefly, the Go Guardian app, some different apps for communication tools, looking at new websites to more effectively communicate with our parents. So we have some comparisons that we're going to look at that neighboring districts look at. But perhaps if we either had a work session as a committee or the whole in communications, we could have discussed that, or if we had committee meetings sooner than the end of July, these are things that could have been discussed. So whether we choose topics for each of our work sessions or kind of go back to the older structure of committees, either one is fine with me, but I think that we need to have those work sessions so that we are putting these agenda items up and getting the input from administrators as we do during committee meetings.
Thank you for that input. Does anyone want to touch on that specific topic, or do they want to also, or does anyone want to give their input or suggestions, comments, questions, concerns about how we're currently operating?
Just have more work study sessions.
You want to have
Yeah, let's get
more of the work
business
sessions?
discussed, yep.
Jessica, I'd also like to add too, I think that part of the discussion that we had was that with so many new board members, we do get the ability to see how the district works from a different angle from administrators. And I think one of the things that we had discussed might be helpful is that if we have a topic that could be discussed maybe via presentation that our administrators generally do put together, that instead of having a formal meeting, that it is a presentation that goes out. So I think one of the things in curriculum that was very helpful for me when I was on it last year was seeing the kind of the rubric that we use for TIP and TAP students and how those are decided and how we go into making those decisions. And I think for the new board members, that is something that's very helpful, but kind of to a point that you and I discussed, that maybe it doesn't need to be a meeting, but it would be helpful to have that presentation that Dr. Reynolds had put together. Just so that there is more education for the new board members to see why we do some of the things that we do, and just to get more insight. And I know it's hard because we can't all be on every single committee, but this at least gives some insight as to how the board works and how the administration works and why we make some of the decisions that we do. And I just think with the lack of work sessions and committee meetings, the newer board members are a little bit at a disadvantage of not really being able to kind of, peel back and see what's going on. So if it's more work sessions, that's fine. And maybe we have a different administrator kind of come in each time and touch on certain topics.
Thank you. And to segue into that, this goes to the conversation that you and I did have. I know that I met with Vincent Marasco and Jason to catch myself up to speed with a few of the things that as board president I have to sign off on and different things that are on the agenda just so I could get a better understanding. And Vincent was able to provide me with a presentation that was done by New Jersey school boards that was super helpful, and just kind of really breaking everything down. And I found that very helpful. I asked for that to be shared with the full board because I think that having that even last year would have been helpful for me as a new board member, but just in general as a board member. And last year I was not on the finance committee in any capacity, so I really felt like I really only got the updates from the committee when we did our committee updates and minutes, which I always felt like I was trying to play catch up, and I didn't even know what questions to ask. So for me personally, something like that was very helpful. And I think that, to your point, Amy, if we do have some presentations for various aspects of the board that take place, I think that will be helpful. Mary Jane does a great job at giving us our board updates once a week since we've changed over to committee of a whole, and I think that if we just expand on that, that could be helpful. Whether we change back to a board of committees or moving forward with a committee of a whole, I think in either direction, getting that information as board members is helpful because there's a lot that goes on the administration aspect that I don't think all of us have a very thorough and deep understanding of. So I do like that idea of us having presentations, or at least having the presentation sent out to the full board, and then we can discuss it further during work sessions, when needed. Yeah. Anyone else?
Jessica.
Yes.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
It's so dark. I'm
It is,
trying to.
yes.
I know you probably can't see me, but I kind of just wanted to touch on that also. And you brought up the Friday updates, which I do definitely. I love them.
Yes.
But it is such a shift in terms of kind of finding information out after the fact, as opposed to being kind of an active participant in discussions. So that's something that feels very different to me as a board member. I loved committee meetings when they were, regularly occurring, where we were actually able to find out information as it was happening and actively contribute to those conversations, as opposed to just kind of following up with questions after the information's been given to us. So I do miss that. However, I'm open to just continuing these work sessions if they're more regular, especially with presentations or different topics like Amy was discussing, because I do think that scheduling committee meetings is currently an issue with this board, and that's not to anybody's fault, but I do think that this is a unique set of schedules that seem to be at play. So if work sessions during board meetings is best for everybody, then I think that that's fine. But personally, I do miss the committee meetings. It's just that the nighttime committee meetings as a mom are rough, I know a lot of us can relate to, but I do miss those work time hour committee meetings, selfishly.
And to be clear, we if we are a committee of a whole, we don't need to not have committee meetings at all. As we said, there's certain topics that are not appropriate to be discussing in a public forum, things like security issues, right? And so just because we're a committee of a whole doesn't mean that there's no committees. There still are committees, and when we need to do certain work in those committees, we can do so. Amy and Brent, I apologize, you don't have these presentations that Mary Jane is passing out right now.
They're in
but,
the
I'm
superintendent's
sorry, she'll
report.
send you a, yes, they're in the superintendent's report. But yeah, so we can do that. We can have, still have committee meetings. Just throwing that out there. Again, we can pull from both of these models. I think that as long as there is a preference and an understanding for one over the other for the majority of our session. So if we're not going to be a committee of the whole, then we tend to not have work sessions. If we are going to be a committee of the whole, then I think that work sessions are needed. But we can also choose to do them like we're doing now, where we did a business session, and then we can do half, the other half can be a work session, or we can change to something that is 2 meetings a month. One meeting will be a business session, the next meeting will be a work session. So there is some flexibility. And to your point, Brenna, we do have a largely working board, which I think is wonderful that we have so many community members that are willing to donate their time. Again, volunteer work here, that we're able to get a board together that is a younger board that is still serving their families while serving our community and our township. And so if we can find that middle ground for all of us, I think that that's kind of the goal right now of this work session.
Yeah, I think, looking at all, some people can't do during the day because they work, some people can't do it during the night because they're a parent. We're all parents, but, I think doing what we're doing tonight works best right now.
Allison, what are your thoughts?
I have too many.
You have too many?
Yeah,
I don't think there's too many.
I do. I have a lot of thoughts.
Let's hear 'em.
So I think that this board, when it came into being in January, frankly, was sold a bill of goods that could not be met. That's what I think. With that being said, 1 meeting a month does not work for almost half of the year.
But we've had more than 1 meeting a month since January.
I understand
That's
that.
what she's saying,
I
it doesn't
understand that. But if we are a committee of a whole, we have a working meeting and then a business meeting. So we do all of the work in the first meeting, and then we come back and we're like, boom, 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 and it's fast. The first meeting is a lot of work, because we're all doing all of the work for policy, for communications, for curriculum, for finance, for buildings and security, what we can. What has happened is the leaders of these committees have met with our administration exclusively, leaving people out. And I think it has caused issues in public session that have been very problematic throughout the year. So I just, whatever we decide to do, I would like it to be consistent, and I would like it to be, I would like it to be thorough. I think regarding advocacy, Mrs. Volpe, you haven't met as a group. You're doing your own thing and representing yourself on the dais, which is potentially an ethics violation every time you speak about it. Just so you know.
Bring up on ethics charges, you're more than welcome to do that.
And I may have to do that if
Go
that's
ahead and
going
do
to be
it.
continuing
Go
the
ahead
case
and
to
do
be.
it.
Because
Go
I
ahead and
don't
do
think
it.
it's
Let's try
fair
and stay
to the
peaceful.
district
Everyone.
to have one person and one viewpoint representing everyone. Because not everyone in the district feels this way.
When I discussed times that I was gonna be in Trenton, you were more than welcome to call me, email me, and say, I'd like to go and voice my opinion. You never contacted me, and I know for sure if I said you wanna drive down there and advocate as a parent, were you really gonna go with me? Neither was Brenna Dillon, so You had more than enough, you're an adult, you could drive down to Trenton and
All right,
advocate.
don't throw me under the bus, I didn't say
I
anything.
have a different role as a school board member.
I
Okay?
understand.
So you went down as an individual, and that's your right to do that. I
But
did not do
First of all,
that.
you're not
I-
even on the advocacy committee.
correct.
So why would I be, having a meeting with you to begin with, if I was doing?
I'm not saying me,
Okay.
I'm saying the advocacy committee hasn't met all year. We met regularly for 2 years to go through different things for our district and what we wanted to advocate on. I don't think it's fair for the board to have one person representing the whole. I just don't. I think it's really problematic.
Well, whoever was in the advocacy committee could have reached out to me and discussed anything that I discussed at the meeting. I didn't feel it was necessary to have a meeting during the day to let the district know that I'm going down to Trenton to follow up on these, the laws that were being passed. I didn't feel it necessary to have Dr. Beck come out, Dr. Garabay come out to listen to me for 10 minutes to say, listen, I don't agree with
That's
this.
not what advocacy does in a committee meeting. You're, like, going to Trenton is you doing that on your
I
own, not
understand.
as a board
I
member.
understand. But I am here to fight against policies I disagree with. If you don't like how I go about doing it, then file an ethics complaint. Then
Okay.
go ahead and do it.
Let's come back to, if I may, if we could just come back to a couple of things here, right? We want to speak respectfully to one another.
I didn't start this.
I'm not
I
saying that
didn't
we're
start
not.
this,
I'm not.
so don't go
I'm
there.
sorry, I'm not,
No.
not
I
speaking.
think,
You're not, I'm just.
Disrespectfully.
No, I'm just
Okay.
putting it out there that we want to
Okay.
remain respectful
But
to one another.
you're saying
And-
that you're not being disrespectful. You're throwing out an
Angelique,
ethics
please.
charge to me.
Let-
Okay, go
let
ahead,
me
Jess.
just-
I'm gonna
please.
refrain, I'm
I
not even
did
gonna
not
respond.
say that.
Okay.
I'm
fine.
just, I would like to put out some ground rules, perhaps I should have started with this, okay? We have to be respectful to one another. You don't have to agree with one another at all. In fact, I think that that's a good thing at times, that we don't always have to agree with one another and see eye to eye on every single thing. The purpose of this work session is to discuss the structure of our board, the concerns that we have now, the things that we like about the board now and the structure of it, if there are any, and how we want to proceed moving forward. So what I don't find productive for this board or for the public's time, because this is a public meeting and the public is here, and we want to be good stewards of everyone's time, not only ours, but the public's, because this isn't a committee meeting. The public is here. We want to make sure that we are discussing what is actually valuable and effective for our board. What I don't believe to be valuable or effective for our board, and you are allowed to disagree with me, but is a back and forth. I don't find that to be beneficial. So if you have concerns or you're not in agreement with something that has been taking place, could we please voice that, again, and remembering to stay respectful to one another, and let's find a solution to it.
I think a healthy discussion is warranted, and if there's a
Absolutely.
disagreement, the public should hear it.
Absolutely.
We're elected by the residents to advocate our positions.
I
And
agree.
I find this healthy. I don't find it disrespectful at all.
I don't want the back and forth to
Back and
sound.
forth is good sometimes. It brings out the passionate feelings about board members and their viewpoints on things. I disagree with your viewpoint
And-
completely.
And you're allowed to have that, Kevin,
Mhm.
but I don't feel that the back and forth yelling at one another.
It's not yelling, we're discussing. I
Yes,
didn't see yelling.
we don't
there.
need to be throwing out threats about ethics claims or.
Well, listen, if someone feels that I'm acting unethically, I welcome an ethics charge. I am so firm on my beliefs of protecting children in this state. If somebody feels that I'm doing it inappropriately, they have every right to charge me with an ethics violation, and I'll be happy to challenge it. I don't feel I do anything wrong. I advocate for every kid in this district and the state, in fact, and I think I do a good job at it. And I really don't care if people are annoyed about it. This is who I am. This is why I ran for the board. Back to the committee, addressing your concerns about that I didn't have a committee meeting. Everything that came about this year,
I spoke in public what I wanted to do about writing a letter about the Serena Rice appointment. I brought it up. I don't feel like an hour meeting was warranted at that time to waste, like Jessica says, be a good steward of everybody's time. I don't think Dr. Beck, Dr. Garabay, Jessica, and John Cameron at the time really had to sit with me for an hour to hear me say, I want to advocate. We discussed it at a meeting. I made a motion. I believe that was the way to do it, to write a letter. We voted on it. At the time when we did vote to send it, it never came up again because she's back on the back burner. I thought that was appropriate how I handled it. I didn't feel a need for a whole meeting to call Brennan Dillon in, to call Jessica and John Camera and the administration for that. I don't know where the ethics violation is that you believe I did, but like I said, I feel that, in my mind, I'm advocating, and I don't, unless it's something major, I don't feel a meeting was warranted in my committee as a chair. And that's all I have to say about it.
So in essence, you did bring it up to the whole, right?
I think.
Yeah, I brought it in, the cow.
So, another thing that has been problematic is that things have come up and, again, working meeting versus a business meeting and an action meeting. We have voted on items in the same meeting, and I think that that is problematic because the board itself does not have enough time to process what it should and receive comments from the public. So I think like if we're gonna do 2 meetings a month and have a working meeting, have all the discussion, like let's say it's happening now, and then, I mean, I don't know where public comment falls in the agenda, whether it falls before or after our working sessions, right? But
If it was just a working session?
if it's
you mean?
just a working session, like, I don't know
Right.
where public comment will fall. Like, that's something maybe we should reach out to NJSBA on. And then they would have a chance, the public would have a chance to comment at the next meeting before we vote on it, so that we have their input. Does that, I'm trying to like figure out what this process is, because we've just been doing, it's like slapped together with a lick and a wipe, and it's been very chaotic. And for 2 years, we didn't have that type of chaos, and so it's uncomfortable, I'm uncomfortable. Change is hard, I understand that, I'm good, I've done a lot of change in my life, all the things, but it's, I think we need to figure out what we're doing.
I think we're a bit wet behind the ears with being a committee as a whole. We gotta figure out, this is what we're doing tonight, figuring it out. But I do have to say that every committee meeting that has happened, every committee member has been invited. Not everyone has been able to come because we all have different schedules. That's what makes it better by doing this tonight. And that, as you said, we should continue doing this. And
Well, and then if you're bringing in the student liaisons, what does that look like? I don't know. If we're gonna have committees, when do we have committee meetings so that the students, if they need to come to a meeting with a proposal, right, like Mrs. Volpe, like we talked about, right?
Yeah.
Like, when would that happen? Would
Well,
we do
could
that
have
at
it-
night?
why
Would
don't
we do that
decide
after
to do that
school?
on, like, instead of the working, we could do it at not the working meeting, the second meeting of the month, and we can have them come, and they can work with the administration on, their agenda, and then, like I said, they'll be doing their own thing with Dr. Garabay, communicating with us as their mentors, and then the second meeting of the month, then they could reply. This way, that's structured for them. They don't have to be here. I mean, I certainly won't want children and their parents to have to sit through this unless they wanted to. They would be welcome, but I figured they could work with the administration on, their committees, and then the second part of the month, come in and report what meetings they were at, what their, intentions are, and so on and so forth. I mean, I think that would be good. This way it's fair to them, their parents, and
Right.
we also include them in one meeting a month, and this way it's not too demanding, especially with sports and other things they may have.
And I think we had talked about, if I may, I think we had talked about that the work that's being done between the students and like almost us the administration helping to facilitate the student liaisons, that like they would be able to come and report. For example, we used, when we went on the facilities tour, Sean, right, mentioning about painting the cafeteria. Us putting in place, and then he could report out to the Buildings and Grounds Committee how administration has helped him to coordinate maybe a poll of students or something like that and do the work through the different types of channels that we have internally, while the students are more accessible, and then they can come, to report on what they've, and add to the value of when it's appropriate to do so, or when the board deems it appropriate to do so.
I definitely think with you and Dr. Rigby's guidance, we're gonna, be able to master that. I think that's the easiest thing, Mrs. Denoy, that we're gonna be able to do is when we include them in the meetings. Touching on how you feel about, that you thought it was chaotic, that may have been your opinion. I actually thought, what we did when we came on, as a board, we accomplished a lot of things. I mean, the budget, I wasn't even on the finance, you were on the finance, but the fact that you guys accomplished all that, we saved this district a ton of money. And I do believe we're gonna be able to do it again this year. I didn't find the reporting out and all that to be chaotic at all. So I don't know where the chaos was.
Because we did the work behind the scenes. We did the committee work behind the scenes. Like, that's what I'm, so like, for me, on this board, for this year, I have met lots of times between policy and finance, my two committees. I've done a ton of, I'm sorry.
I was with you on the
I've done a
policy.
ton of work.
I just missed this past meeting because I was away, but I was there.
I understand that, but I'm saying, like, finance and policy are the only two committees that have met on a regular basis throughout this year. So from my
So the curriculum, I think, nothing was called because there was nothing on the table. Is that, my interpretation? I don't,
Yeah,
I mean,
so
if there's nothing to, speak about, I would assume that a meeting wouldn't be
Well,
called.
and I can speak to that being the curriculum chair. Yes, we did have one curriculum meeting, but there's curriculum that was written this summer. And so for us to have met to discuss the curriculum while it's being written, there was nothing. As I reported out on, it was just finished, so now is an appropriate time for us to meet. So I think there's a few things at play here. I think that there has been, over the last few years, when some other board members have been on the board, there has been other things that came down the pipeline. A lot of things that maybe curriculum had to meet more for, or when there was finance and negotiations that were negotiating with the different services that we have. Yes, at certain times, certain years, there's going to have to be a need for more committee meetings, especially when we were operating as a board of committee. This year, I'm not saying that there wasn't, that's why we're talking right now to see if something was missed or if there was a missed opportunity for us to meet. But at least for curriculum, the lack of meetings for curriculum has been because there hasn't been much to discuss. So I can speak to that. I do think that obviously in policy, right, we just sat through that whole meeting with all of that. We've met other times for other instances. There has been email gone back and forth when there has not been need necessarily for a formal gathering. And I know finance, obviously, they met as well during budget time. Now it's been a little quieter because they're not in budget time anymore. So I think that to have meetings just to have them is what we're trying to avoid. But when there is a need for it, that's when perhaps we need to have it. But I think the question is, should we be having these meetings behind the scenes to be doing them as a board of committees, or should we be doing these discussions during a public board meeting? That really is essentially what we're discussing here.
But what would it be best for everybody's time? Doing a working session like this, or meeting like during the day, like with the, legal appointments, and, the policy?
I know Amy has something to say, I don't want to disregard her. Yeah, no, I'm sorry, it's just, I wanted to.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know what you were talking about.
No, I think that's a valid point, yes.
I could work either way, whatever works for everybody, but if this is more, beneficial, that we bang it out in 2 meetings, that's fine too, but,
It seems like some things will have to be during the day.
Yes.
And some things can be in a working session. It depends on the topic. Like with the finance, when the budget's happening, a lot more things in the crunch might have to happen during the school day when Vince is more available and able to talk on those topics better and have everything with him.
So I think when we
And then Amy, we're gonna get to you.
if I may, when we transitioned in January, right, and we were moving to the board of a whole, I started with the weekly updates, right? And I think for the board is that when it comes time for the agenda, right, and the agendas come out on the board meeting, are you getting the substantial information that you need to support not only what's happening in the district, but the recommendations that are being made? That's how Vince and I have worked together collaboratively to provide that background information for the recommendations that are coming.
Your reports definitely, it's not, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I apologize.
No, go ahead.
Your reports definitely help me. They give me a head start, and I do appreciate that a lot. I know a lot of work goes into that, and I think it does save us time, because I look at it and I'm like, if I see a problem, you're gonna hear from me, and then we can move on, but
Yeah.
like I said, that's a big time saver for us. And
So going along with that, I think that's a case where I have had people who have reached out and said, I think that with regards to Dr. Reynolds sending the curriculum, right, that's also on this week's update that it was shared. And then saying, is there anything on those 5 revisions that have occurred that you see we need to have a meeting for? Jessica, you had mentioned that you reported out on that and said if we want to have a meeting to discuss anything, here's the information if it needs to be discussed. So that's somewhat of the process that I think Vince and I have tried to put into place. When it came time for budget, obviously, through Jason and working through it, you have to have a lot more detailed conversation about very specific things. Buildings and grounds, not all and safety and security, not all conversations are appropriate for the public, as you've mentioned times in here. So there are things, right, that go into that I think that I've tried to balance that with regard to information, because we know that in a committee, it becomes a very detailed and can be a very lengthy conversation as well. So that's just a structure that we've tried to put, Vince and I have tried to put in place with the administration to support the ongoing relay of, information and through what's happening in the district, as well as what will potentially be a recommendation on a board agenda.
Is there a bylaw for committee of a whole? Because we have bylaws for board of committees.
So,
I don't recall.
no, so bylaw,
Yeah.
is there one?
Mhm.
I mean, we can look for one. We don't, I know we
I know
don't.
we don't have
I
it.
looked
I
at
know we
2
don't
other,
have it.
when we initially moved over, I looked at 2 other districts who were committee of a whole, and they did not have it. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist, and I only looked at 2 districts in the area, so potentially. But
I think that's a question then that we need to reach out to Tim Pena. So that there's, just so that there's structure, because the board is very young, right? Myself included, this board is young, and so I had, whether you liked the board or not, but I had a benefit that I thought was quite strong in that there were experienced board members that understood Robert's Rules of Order and the structure, and so my learning curve was much quicker because of the experience of the members of the board. I was able to come in and do work much quicker, I think, in a lot of ways. And I just think some type of structure around this would be helpful. Because I still feel like there's not enough
I
process in
understand
place.
your frustration with the structure, but, I got a comment that I don't feel, the fact that you comment that it's a new board. I think everybody adjusted very well in the short period of time that we've been here, and we did phenomenal things. I don't think, because we're a new board, we're incompetent in any way.
I'm not suggesting that.
No, I'm just saying as factual. I don't think because we're new, we could say that, we're not following Robert's rules. Everybody, I'm sure, read the book and briefed themselves on that. But I understand, if your frustration is the way we're running it, let's work on that. I have no problem with it. I'm willing to meet you halfway. You want to do committees, whatever that makes you happy, I'm willing to do it. Okay?
Very
It's
nice.
not about me.
Very nice.
Well, I'm just saying, I'm okay with how things have been going, but I don't want to see a fellow board member upset that you feel that, we're not experienced enough, it's a newer board, we're wet behind the ears,
It's just-
whatever.
It's the fact.
I understand, but
That's just a fact. It's not,
do you agree that we have not accomplished great things
we
since
still have a lot of
January?
great things.
And we're both opposite sides of the spectrum, but yet we accomplished good things. So if we
I
could
don't
get the
think that that's
structure-
That's not what. that's
Okay,
not
I know,
what
but I'm
this
just
is
saying,
about.
if we could, accommodate you and get some structure, I think we'll be in good shape then.
Well, I I think also it's not just accommodating one or two board members. I think that the goal is moving forward, right? We
That
have,
seems the only issue right now is just having a little structure on how we do the meetings. Once that's done, we can continue
absolutely
working
doing the work of the board.
and that's it.
And I
So that's-
don't think that there's any insinuation that this board, since January, has not been successful in accomplishing various things here. You know, we could make a whole list of things that we've accomplished. I think that it is from what I'm hearing and from what I've heard prior to this, is that there's little structure around how we go about things, as far as where the discussions are happening, whether or not they're happening via email, or whether they're happening during a committee meeting, whether they're happening in the meeting themselves. And so, I'm so sorry. Okay, Amy, do you want to just say, I'm so sorry, we didn't get to what you wanted to say? Did you?
No, I jumped in way before.
Okay.
I think that most of it's been covered, and I think, to Angelique's point too, that if we could continue accomplishing things with more structure, that everyone would kind of be happy. That's all. So whether it's committees or one work session and one meeting to pass our items, I think that would be fine.
Okay, thank you for your input.
All right, thank you.
So maybe we could put a list together of what, working session, what the main things of the committees we want to talk about.
Well, that's what the agenda would be. There would have to be, so the work session, there have to be a formal agenda set for it. So like for tonight, there was only this one item on the work session agenda, but if we went forward with doing a committee of a whole, committee of a whole, then there would be a formal agenda set for it. So we would put on there, like, all of the things that we just discussed in policy, potentially, that would have been on our work session, instead of it taking place in a committee meeting. The things that you discussed, as Amy was saying, during communications, that would be on the work session. So we would be discussing those things here as a full board, versus just you and Amy, versus Jason, Allison, and I.
Right,
So
so
those are all of the things that would be on that work session.
Committee chairs and vice president and Dr. Garabay, what topics we want to talk about, put that on the agendas and we discuss them. And then move forward to the next one, voting if need be.
Any other input here? And then I'm going to give what I'm proposing, what I'm going to propose. And Vince, I'm sorry, did you have something?
No, it was just more or less, I think,
Draw us back?
just a way to frame this thing,
Yeah.
right? The goal is you want to work efficiently and
Yes.
effectively as board members. So maybe you need to ask yourselves, are we, when you consider committees versus committee of the whole, are we comfortable in, let's say you did stuff with committees, are you comfortable in placing people accordingly and with the lead of administration and working closely? The role of a chairperson, in my estimation, is very important to running a committee with that administrator. Because that's where the first dialogue is going to happen as far as what needs to be discussed, whether it's board of the whole or in that committee. And so to frame it, I think the board needs to ask, are they comfortable and will they accept trust in the good work, the advisory work, the research that the committee is doing to bring forth to the board and then go forth with that action and support it. In the past, that's
What has worked?
predominantly how we operated, and it was successful. There was trust, a lot of it, between the good work of the committee, and it doesn't preclude if somebody wants to go and sit on a committee that they are not, stated that they're on. They can,
That's a fair
they
point.
can go and meet.
And that's why we send out
and
the
if it
agendas ahead of
becomes
time.
an-
We send
and
out when the meetings
It
are
becomes an OP,
happening.
if there's a sunshine law issue, then you
Switch it out.
you discuss that. There are alternates, so that's a question, more or less, I think that could be helpful, just a suggestion, when you think about the whole thing. The other thing, just as a comment to address Mr. Rugnetta's comment on the committee of the whole, and I understand you're trying to be efficient with time, so while you may be having a longer work session meeting because you're discussing a
Business
myriad
sessions or.
of comments, plus you may have to be inviting administrators in now.
Sure.
It could be a very long board meeting. It's not to say committee meetings cannot be long, but you're sort of dividing and conquering. Schedule them appropriately. Put the right board members who can meet during the day, put them on the ones that you see fit, who can make it. The ones who can't make evening meetings, put them on the committees during the day. That sort of thing, I think, can be flushed out. So that's
Absolutely.
just
And
a,
that-
just a
There's
thing.
also
There are,
Yes.
committee meetings.
there's
Yes.
pros and cons with each, obviously.
Absolutely.
And Tim went through all of that. I realize that. So
And on that note,
yeah.
I appreciate that insight, Vince.
Okay.
And on that note, I think that we have to do a reorg for the committees anyway, now that we have a ninth board member. And so I'll be reaching out to board members and
Yeah, it's a great
looking
time.
for your input. And so that's another great time for us to say, not only where are your interests and where do you find that your skill set is most valuable for these committees, but are we also going to be talking about what board members are not available during the day at all in any capacity? Because as Mary Jane just mentioned, we have a remote option for our committee meetings. I know I took, my goodness, I'm missing the word here. Advantage, thank you.
Advantage.
Advantage, thank you, Brenna. I took advantage of that last year a lot when I didn't have childcare services for my son, and so I was able to hop on the committee meeting virtually. And so, you know, that's always an option for us to be doing committee meetings virtually if you can't make it here in person, if you have that ability as well. So I can reach out and we can start there to see what the structure of those committees, because regardless, we're going to have committees, committee of the whole or board of committees, and then we can go from there. We can also decide to stick with us being a committee of the whole, which we technically are right now, and doing a true meeting of just a work session in the beginning of September and see what that looks like with a full agenda so that we can all sit in that and see what that feels like.
I think that'd be best.
Because I don't think that we're really understanding what that means, to Vince's point, with administration here, going through an agenda for all the committees, getting something on that, work session, having all of our administrators here, and vetting that all out. Maybe that's what we need to really truly be able to compare and contrast here. So that's kind of where my mind is. I think in order for us to make this decision, maybe we need to put ourselves truly in that, because I don't think we've had that, obviously as being our first work session.
But an ad hoc committee to investigate the difference of the.
We are not
committee
going
of
to
the
do
whole.
that.
We could, there's plenty of
I am not
information
creating
we can,
another
what we can
committee.
gather, so I'm just for the committee.
A committee to investigate the committee, a
Committee
committee to
to-
investigate the committee.
Nope, we're good.
A lot of info.
Yes. All right, so what I'm going to ask of this board is, like I said, I'm going to be reaching out, so I would like everyone to carefully consider and think about where your skill set is best placed, what your availability is like, because those will be things that I will be asking you. And we'll start there, like I said. I will work with administration to determine if the first meeting of September is best as a work session meeting, and develop what that looks like. Maybe we can send a draft agenda to, like, a semi-draft agenda to show the board what that would look like. And then we can go from there. Does that sound agreeable to everyone? Does everyone here feel like their concerns were heard tonight? I know we don't necessarily have a resolution yet, but does everyone feel that they've voiced what they wanted to voice? I don't want us to leave here tonight after all of this and still have words left unsaid. All right then. Well, with that being, Brenna, are you good? You're good? Okay.
Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
All right, well, with that being said, if there are no other comments or questions or concerns that we want to address, I think we can make a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Kevin?
Second.
All in favor?
Vince?
Aye.
Yes.
Opposed? No? Meeting adjourned.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night, get safe.